Hey, beautiful souls. Today we have an incredible special guest, Christopher Anatra, and he is the creator of the Quantum Businessman YouTube channel. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you. So happy to be with you here today, Joe.
Yeah, I was just saying to Chris that I'm sort of fangirling here because I love the content of Chris's videos because it's so energizing. It's, what is discernment? Discernment is what lifts you up or what pulls you down. And when I watch Chris's concepts and ideas, it's very energizing to me. So it makes me want to watch more. And that's one of the simplest ways to discern if something is right for you. How does it make you feel after you watch it? So how did you get into the quantum businessman, that whole concept, Chris?
Well, for me, the concept started with my business and how I had a situation where I had clients. This was around the year 2017-ish, so to speak, where they would come to me and talk to me about bugs in my software. And for people that don't know, I own a small software company that specializes in food distribution. So they would come to me and say, hey, what happened to my Stouffer's stovetop stuffing? Your software changed it to Kraft. And I'd be like, that doesn't sound right. Or what happened to my Haas avocados? Your software changed it to Haas avocados. And I would be like, I can't imagine a bug that would cause something like that. And that was introducing me in my own way to this concept of what the Mandela effect was. And that's pretty much how I started it, with my clients asking me questions and then finding out that, and then like my mind being blown, because when I would research it, it's the way it always was. So in this timeline, for example, it's always been Hass avocados, HASS, where many people remember that being Haas, HAAS. So that's an example, kind of the short answer to how I got involved with this.
And
And then
sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, and then other things followed, including light language. So, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point too, because I think for both of us, sometimes the light language just has to come out. So when we're having this conversation, feel free to let it flow.
Yes, likewise. If because for me it's like this, it sort of pushes and comes on out like a sneeze almost, and I have to really, in some places it's not always the best, but I think we should let it flow today. So
Right.
how did you also then get into reading the Akashic records? Because how you look at the Mandela effect is sort of another step on from a lot of the people that talk about it, because you are saying that it reflects, I think, sort of a higher level of not influence, but there's a higher reason behind the Mandela effects.
Exactly. Yeah, and then how does that tie into the Akashic records, and what is reality and all that? So for me, the way it started was my life really started to get turned upside down, probably starting the end of 2016 into 2017. These Mandela effects were hitting me. And then one day, I've told the story before, but I'll give you the shorter version of it. At one point, I had a situation at my house where my ex-wife had asked me if she could use my backyard for an event she was holding. And I was like, no, I don't think so. And then finally, like, okay, you can do it. So she was having an event, and then I didn't realize it, but it was a Tantra type event. And they were doing different things like eye gazing. And they're like, Chris, do you want to do eye gazing with us? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And then they wound up convincing me to do it. So I was eye gazing with someone. You didn't know who you're going to eye gaze with. You like lined up, back to back, and then you had to shuffle over 2 steps, and then you turn around, and whoever that was, that's who you had to eye gaze with. So I was eye gazing with this probably 25-year-old woman with these big green eyes, and I actually felt like I was going to pass out. Like I literally thought I was going to faint onto the floor, and I had to excuse myself, and I went up to my bedroom, and I sat down on my bed. And I'm sitting on the edge of my bed, and I look up and I see 2 lion people in my bedroom. And I'm like, what are lion people, like with a human form, but like a lion head. One was like a male. The other one was a female, like a lioness. She had like a ruby on her head and a beautiful blue dress, and he had on like a blue military uniform. And I'm like, who installed a holographic projector in my bedroom? Like, who's playing this trick on me? So, I'm watching this scene, and then after about 30 seconds, they just kind of dissipate. And I'm going behind my dresser looking for plugs and some kind of, holographic thing. And I'm like, what the heck is this? So I started asking people, like, what is that? What could that mean? And then later on, almost every night, I would close my eyes and start to see these visions, HD color visions of these amazing scenes that I couldn't even, I say I'm not creative enough to even come up with what I saw. So someone said, Chris, it sounds like you're getting access to your Akashic records. And I'm like, what are Akashic records? Like, because I'm in the computer world, completely asleep, having no idea about anything beyond, the 3D world. So then I started doing research into the Akashic records. I took some courses with people that taught the Akashic records and started going through these steps where I started to be able to get more access. And then, getting more access, going through my divine self, reading this Akashic record. I'll call it a database for all the different lives or scripts we've played. So yeah, so like one thing led to another. Mandela effects, visions, lion people, and you hear light language. I had a light language activation that happened to me. So boom, 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 boom. Like my life the way it is now, 6 or 7 years ago, if you were to tell me what the way it is now, I would have thought like you're crazy. So for anybody that has like anyone that, they're not waking up fast enough, sometimes you can wake up really fast, and then where you're going to be in the future, you have no idea. Besides, it's going to be positive.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because for me, it started at a much earlier age. And I remember like reading a lot of science fiction as a kid from age 13. And that sort of put all these different ideas in my mind about time travel, about parallel realities and things. And then I would have to say that Star Trek Next Generation, there are 2 episodes if anybody wants to go and have a look. The Batleth competition is one, and the other one is Yesterday's Enterprise. And
yesterday.
this is before I ever woke up. This was when I was just, being a normal kid, traveling and everything. But it just really stuck with me, these concepts of quantum realities. And when I got on my journey, my spiritual journey, we would talk about quantum mechanics and the many worlds theories, and that all potentials exists just as waves, and us in our energy and in our perspective determine which one of those waves collapses into the particle of reality. And so I understood that we quantum leap a lot. We are shifting realities all the time. And quantum mechanics says it happens even when you choose an orange or choose an apple, that whichever one you choose becomes the particle, but the other stays the wave. And my first understanding of quantum leaping was when I was in the shower one morning. So I had long hair back then down to my waist. And I was in the shower one morning, and my hair felt shorter in the shower, because you can feel it on your back. It's such a slow growth, but there was like this much missing. And it was so obvious from the day before in the shower that I knew I had done some sort of leap. And it was the first confirmation, because I hadn't gotten my hair cut. It was just the feeling of it was this much shorter on my back as I was washing my hair. So I knew that was actually happening. But the reason that how can I go from here? All right, so let's just jump straight into the Mandela effects and what you think and what you perceive the reason behind them is, that it isn't just something that CERN is doing, in Switzerland, that it is actually has a deeper meaning.
Yeah. So when I investigate Mandela effects, um, I find that there could be like different reasons for different causes for why there's a Mandela effect. And then also too, I try to go to another level where is there a hidden meaning for us to decode? Are they just random, or do they actually giving us a message from, let's say, an outside source that's trying to give us information about our reality? But the bottom line is that the way you've described it, and I describe it as like different timelines that we're in. Some people will use the many worlds theory to try to, describe what's happening. I like timelines just because there's so much soft disclosure that uses that concept of timelines, even if it's like movies that you see, like the Marvel comic book movie based off the comic book series. Um, those type of things are all using timeline concept. So it becomes a little bit easier to use that. So basically, could it be that, everything is energy, frequency, and vibration? So as we increase our frequency and our vibration, are we literally vibrating into a higher frequency bandwidth timeline where things were not the same as we remember it to be? Because that's one thing, is that we have our memories, and our memories conflict with what the current reality is. And then when you see these Mandela effects, it's not just like, oh, there's a few of them. I've seen like lists of over 10,000 Mandela effects.
Wow.
So there's so many of them, and they're literally not slowing down. Sometimes people will be like, well, I haven't heard of any new Mandela effects. Well, I'm like, well, you're not paying attention, because it seems like they're on the rise. And I'll give you just one brief example of something that I just spotted the other day. Was, well, one of the ones that woke me up right away was the JFK assassination,
Mm.
because I remember as a kid watching the Zapruder film, almost going frame by frame, trying to figure out, how many shooters were there and all that kind of stuff, trying to solve what that mystery could be. So I was actually shocked when I saw the way it is now in this timeline, where before I remember 4 people in the car, and now there's 6. I believe it's Governor Connolly and his wife are the 2 extra people that were never there before. And the governor of Texas, Connolly, he gets shot. And all these things happen totally differently. But now there's even more Mandela effects. So, and actually, when I was a kid, I remember there being 3 people in the car, and I remember it being black and white. And then it became color, and 6 people in the car, and there was only the Zapruder film. Now there's the Orville Nix film. Orville Nix was filming on the other side of where Abraham Zapruder was filming. So I believe in the Orville Nix film, you could actually see Abraham Zapruder on the other side. And then there's another person named Marie Muchmore. She was shooting a film. And then I just found out just this past weekend, there's another film. I forget the name of the woman that did it, but she was filming from the depository where Lee Harvey Oswald was. And I never heard of that before. And then there's even more people in the background that are filming, you can see in the Zapruder film, that I never saw before. And one was having the giving off a time traveler type frequency. So I'm like, time travel, merging timelines, because it's literally timelines are merging. And then, so that could be a reason for Mandela effects. And also time travel itself could be a reason for Mandela effects, depending on what it is. So there's multiple reasons. And I think as we keep learning more and more of us keep investigating this, there's just going to be more layers of the onion that we start to peel away, so that it all starts to make sense.
One of the things that you've talked about in your videos is that, excuse me, one of the Mandela effects you mention is that all the cast of the Gilligan's Island go to having green eyes, except for the billionaire. And when you checked in, you feel that this is an indication or a reflection of a shifting consciousness of humanity in general, in whole, and that there is a reason. It's almost like we're being shown something on a very subtle level about the shifts that are taking place in humanity. Who is doing that? What is doing that?
Ultimately, I think it's us that are doing that. So yeah, and so eye color is something that's interesting because there's been a lot of famous characters in history whose eye colors have changed. Everything from, a lot of people remember Hitler having brown eyes to now in this timeline he has blue eyes. Abraham Lincoln was known to have brown eyes by a lot of people. Now in this timeline he has gray eyes. The cast of Gilligan's Island going to those green eyes, like especially Bob Denver, who played Gilligan, and then trying to track that back in the Akashic records. What could be like the cause of it. And one of the things that I tracked back had to do with his DNA ancestry going back to ancient Egypt. So, but all these things, and the body changes. So whether it's eye color or the placement of our heart in our body, which is now in the center, or the kidneys, which are up near our lungs, protected in our rib cage, or now our liver goes all the way across where the stomach is. The liver always used to be like on one side below the rib cage. Now most of it's in the rib cage, and then it goes all the way past where the stomach is. And there's there's more changes in the skull, etc. All these things appear to be upgrades. Nothing appears to be negative. So as our frequency is rising, our human avatar, how we render ourselves into this reality, is getting better and healthier. Because, like, for example, bigger liver means we can detox more toxins from the environment. Or a heart in the center of our chest means that our blood can pump more evenly throughout our body, and our heart field is more centered. So when our heart chakra and our heart field start to activate, it's more of a united thing, so that it lines up with all the other chakras instead of like being off a little bit. So I see all these things as being definitely positive.
Well, that's the other reason I like your videos, is because you are taking an interested viewpoint of what's happening in this world. I don't see you as being fear-based in the matrix or anything like that. And there are people that are saying, we're in a prison planet, and that may well be, but it doesn't solve anything. It's about your frequency. And as a healer, I talk about the energy that you sit in, the emotions you sit in, even mostly which are unconscious, are affecting the field all the time. And if you want to be an active participant in this evolutionary process we're in, you have to look within. You have to deal with your own unfinished stuff, your own shadow. And that, as we all work within and heal within our wounded inner child, for example, we begin to emanate that healing and assist everybody on the planet. And it's interesting because I came across the grid, what I call the grid, when I was about 29. And I was pulled out of my body one night and taken through the grid. Now, I didn't know it as the grid at that time. I wasn't told it was the grid for about 10 years. And it was just like what you would think the holodeck would be like on the Next Generation, on the Enterprise. So
Okay.
it was lines up and down and lines across. So it was like cubes all joined. And I flew through it, and it was limitless. And about 4 years after that, I did some Gestalt dream therapy and went into that and spoke as it. And it was ancient, 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 but it had not a negative charge or a positive charge. It was just a structure. And so and then about 5 years later, I understood that the grid was malleable and programmable, and that we could do it with our intent. We could change this world. So if you're looking in your house at the moment, there's actually invisible grid lines, which is the structure of the simulation or the hologram, and that we are unconsciously programming it day by day by how we think. And you had said that like talking about it as a game. And if you hate the game is going to give you more reasons to hate it. And that's sort of along the same lines as what I understand. That I try not to see this as a prison planet or a trap, but something to have fun with, something to experiment with. And that attitude is what I find through your videos, that it's taking the higher road about what we're going through.
Yeah, exactly. And I call it the Earth game, but I definitely see that, and it becomes a reflection of what we are projecting, and what we are taking in as far as our viewpoint of the world can have a direct effect on what we see and what we observe and how people treat us and so forth. So it's all a mind game, and the mind game is within us. And then figuring all these things out and how to navigate this, and then how to achieve abundance, and abundance in health, in wealth, in love, like all those type of things are what we really all are trying to get to that like upper level, so that this becomes the greatest show, literally the greatest show for us.
Yeah, yeah. Another one of my favorite little clips of yours is where you pull out, is it the Rick and Morty, where they're in the
Oh,
arcade?
yes.
Explain that one to our viewers. That was such a different viewpoint of what we're going through.
Yeah, and isn't it really interesting about how we have all of this soft disclosure? It's almost like a rule of the Matrix. Like the Matrix has to give us this soft disclosure, and it's up to us to figure out if it's truth or if it's a distortion of truth. But most people just like they'll see it and they'll laugh, and they won't think about it again. But in that clip you're talking about, so the two characters, Rick and Morty, which are based off of Doc and Marty from Back to the Future, they go into this arcade, and Marty gets this thing put over his head to play this game called Roy. And all of a sudden, his eyes roll back, and he's starting another life as a kid. And he wakes up and he's like, he has a bad dream. But the whole concept is that he lives his whole life, in this thing that he thought was real. He becomes a football star. He marries his, high school sweetheart. They have a family. He gets older. He gets cancer. He beats cancer. And then he goes back to work, and then he dies. And then you see game over. So, and all of a sudden he comes back to the arcade, and he's, only like a moment has passed, but to him, he's lived a whole lifetime. And so Rick puts the head thing on, and he's like, let me show you how you play this thing. And he winds up getting the high score because he takes his character off the grid and has him do all these things that a normal person wouldn't do in their life to really live life as an adventure. So it kind of shows us, it's giving us different things. One is that, so outside of this reality, is it possible, like here, we have linear time, is it possible that 100 years, let's say we live to be 100 years old, on the other side that we're projecting into, maybe only a few hours have passed. So what seems to be like years and years and years up there might only be minutes. So you've got that kind of a concept. And then you have the concept of, are you dreaming? Are you on a holodeck dreaming this experience that you think is real? Because this has all been presented to us as this is what reality is, and we just don't ask any questions. And we have all of the scientific experts and, governments telling us one thing, and, politicians telling us this, and, we're taught in school, et cetera, et cetera. So we just believe all of this is real. But is it really real? Could it be a holographic reality that we're in, that we're all dreaming, and we're all kind of, our dreams are intersecting in our own bubble of reality. So as I talk to you, our bubbles of reality are intersecting. The viewers that are watching this right now, they're intersecting, like all of our bubbles of reality are all intersecting and creating this game.
Yeah, I had that sort of, it wasn't a game. When I was driving once, I was thinking about this. This was 20 years ago, thinking about where was I? And when I thought I could potentially be in, say, some temple somewhere or some place where I was going through an initiation, and that the initiation was to live this life with all of its challenges. And that just like the Rick and Morty game, when I came to the end, I'd go back into that temple or wherever, into who I truly was, going, whew, what a lesson. What did I learn in, 70, 80 years? In that time, only took a minute there. And when I had that thought that I could be somewhere else and this is a simulation or an illusion, I just started to hyperventilate and I just had to pull off the road and the energy was surging through me. So I knew there was something going on, but I didn't understand that really until many, many years later. Oreshianzukute bekikande yatsakabute jekeniaka. Kukariatsegabite sinyo kukariatsekikanyate. Kikuta debibite zikikacha, and great fun it is. Oshikombodeje sakayatsekakariataka. And this is such an appropriate gesture. Yeah. Koreanzibite. Sekukariatsekabaati shetsue bebitikanya. Kongia jujete kika. Seti konyodotori kambandeya shetsakiaka.
Lasciamo ciacco e sietro me annitia gyoishulia motobe momalino no mala dusianata passo shianyano wa tabin tukiasu shiala ma kulembetiti sion kwa kukia sociologiano piatro setedignanato. So like when we speak like this, we're actually like transmitting the data, right, on another level. So we can talk in English, right, which is almost spell casting because words can have multiple meanings. Sometimes we don't know what we're saying. Have a good weekday, for example, but does that mean you want to be like weak, or does it mean W-E-A-K or W-E-E-K? So there's all these different things going on. But when you go right to light language, especially when you use a type of light language that transcends all of that, and for those that don't know, the main dialect that I speak is called Hibaru, which is one of the original angelic languages before the Tower of Babel fell, all that type of stuff. And it has a lot of things that our lower self may not be picking up, but our higher self is like, all right, got it. So yeah, so it's a great way to communicate. It sounds, for people on the outside, it sounds like, who are these people talking gibberish? But there's a lot of more transmitting going on than that.
Yeah, I see it as also like circumventing the ego or circumventing the resistance. So I use it as a healer. So I'll be talking to somebody in English about what's happening, what they need to do, what they maybe need to let go of. But if that doesn't sit well with their reality, they'll bounce it off. They'll bounce the energy of the words and bounce the concept off. But when I bring through the light language, it comes in and settles into the system and complements the energy that you are emitting, because it is frequencies and codes and things. So yeah, it's just incredibly profound. And I think more and more people are speaking it at this time to help with that deeper expansion that we haven't maybe have an idea of how to do, or it seems so difficult or far away that I could ever be this type of person. So this is there to help you let go of or circumvent your resistance, your doubt that you could be this expansive being that has the ability to, manifest a loaf of bread in your hand. O gengike, unge kikange oboyanane ungaki kaba. Hanyana no koe tikanya sakaboka. Hanya karite bebiti kenya. Sakataria she sanya kue se I naka ue tikawa anye tsukoyatsu.
Rashunyata. Bushiti. I'm thinking too that some people that are watching us right now, they are probably in the responding mode. Like they could hear both of us talk, and then they might, as they're watching us, light language might start to flow from them. So if you're watching this and the language is flowing from you, it's a good thing. Put your ego aside if it's new for you, and just let it, open your heart and just let it flow. because when we bring down these codes, we're doing so much for the planet. We're doing so much good for the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how do you teach somebody to speak light language? So in my experience, you just start speaking it to them. And if they're open and they just trust and let it flow, it will come. If it's on their timeline or if it's something they truly wish to do, you will be able to access it, from my understanding.
Yeah, I know for myself, when I first started speaking it, the day that it happened was literally Christmas Day in December 2017. I was having like a kind of like emotional breakdown, remembering past lives. And, and then all of a sudden it just started coming out. So it's almost like I cleared a little bit out of me so that my divine self or higher self could like go in through my heart and be able to like express this through my vocal cords and my tongue and so forth, to bring those vibrations in. But for me, it just happens. So you can't, it's hard to plan it, etc. When you're ready, it'll happen.
Well, when I first started to speak it, I didn't even know what light language was. I hadn't even heard the term, but I wasn't afraid or anything. And then eventually people came to me that could explain to me what it was. And so for about 6 months, I practiced. I walked up and back in my house because I couldn't do it outside, but just talking, just getting comfortable with it, just letting it flow. So I never used it in my healing sessions until a couple of years later. I was just practicing letting this energy go. And I move too. I have a physical reaction with it as well, or a physical manifestation of it. And I know that I've traveled a lot in the years since getting it, and that I'm prompted to bring it up at all sorts of different places, ley line crossings and at the top of mountains and clearing portions of the land. So I have been doing that probably for about the last 2 years, traveling all around and bringing through light language, clearing some of the heavy, dense histories that are in that area of the planet.
Yeah, you're actually like that grid you described, that's the projection that you see, you're actually vibrating it to a higher vibration with your light language. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So do you use your light language simply for yourself, or do you use it, do you think, for the planet mainly? What's your concept of it?
My concept of it is that I don't actually feel like sometimes I'll use it for myself if I feel like I need to do a clearing or something like that. Sometimes I'll sense that there's other beings present with me in the room that I can't see, that I need to communicate something to, and then it just starts coming out, and I could tell there are others that are listening to it, even though I can't see them. Sometimes when I go different places, it just starts to erupt out of me. Sometimes I have to be careful not to do it in front of people that don't understand it, because like, who is this crazy guy talking, doing his gibberish talk? So yeah, so it depends, but I feel that, or sometimes I'll do sessions with people and I'll do the light language in a session, and I try to scan into their DNA to see if they have anything that needs to be unlocked. And then I feel that my divine self is giving them or reminding them of the blueprints that they already have, so they can start to unlock these special features that they have no idea. So yeah, I use it in different capacities like that.
Do you feel that it's like, sometimes I feel like it's a being speaking through me, and other times it's just an energy? Do you ever perceive that it's another being? And do you think it's aspects of you in different nows that is speaking? Or do you think it is some sort of somebody in your, say, soul family or some other reality that's sort of interested in what's going on here?
Yeah, see, for myself, and I know some people have the ability to channel and so forth. So for myself, I always try to like, I get the sensation that it's like coming through me, through like my heart, and it's going up through up through my throat. So for myself, I feel that it's coming from me, but like another higher level of me that has access to this language with its million-letter alphabet. So, yeah.
And there's some talk about this structure, this matrix that we're in, that is, do you think that the light language is coming from beings within that 12D structure that has sort of been stuck or trapped or in this mind game? Or do you think your light language is coming from somebody that isn't in this, or an aspect of you that isn't sort of in this construct that we're in?
Yeah, I feel it's so if you think about the construct and the many layers to it. So when I think about when I use the concept of like bubble of reality, I believe I envision that as our bubble of reality within time and space, which could have like just even on the earth plane and on the earth realm, and earth has many realms, like we're just in one of her, I feel over 1 million realms that, and everything's happening at the same time, right? So everything gets a little, when you start looking at all these different aspects, it's kind of, there's a lot going on. So for myself, if you think of it as there's another higher being of us dreaming this dream outside of time and space, that has access to all of this information, my goal has always to be able to open up the pathways so that that is being channeled through there. So yeah, and as far as other beings being trapped and channeling them, I don't really know that much about that. But it's for me, it's almost like if you think about, I talk about the concept of being in a dreaming pod, and I talk about the concept of the 144,000 and who they are, and the significance of that number and how it's used. You know, the Mayans used it in their back as a back ton in their calendar, which is 140.
Can you talk a little bit more about the 144,000 then?
Yeah. So, okay. So as far as, again, I'm going to use the terminology of a game just because it's a good way for me to like illustrate it. I think Earth is more than that, but I'm going to use that concept of a game.
Yeah.
There's players, just like a regular video game. There's players in the game, and then there's different classes of players. There are, you know, normal players, and then there are the more of the elite players I call the dragons, and then there are non-player characters, and then there are entities. So we've got this mix of all these different beings. And so when it comes to 144,000, we have all these clues as that it's an important number. So like 144,000 days in the Mayan Bactun calendar. There's 144,000 casing stones on the Great Pyramid of Giza, where there was when it was constructed. In the Bible, in the book of Revelation, it talks about the 144,000. So the information that I get has to do with 144,000 of these dragon or elite players, grouped into 12 soul tribes, just like in the Bible talks about the 12 different tribes of Israel, so to speak. But this is a little bit different because, well, there's things that have been hijacked, so to speak. I don't want to get into that part of it, but basically 144,000 of these players that are here to bring extra light to help awaken all of the other players. And I feel there's literally 144 million players, and then there's a whole lot of NPCs. And then that gets into a whole other subject as well. And about a ratio of 1 player to about 5,000 NPCs, which is kind of like far out stuff. So people, because everyone seems real, right? But what really is this projection that we've created? So yeah, so I believe that these 144,000 are literally on this ship called the New Jerusalem. And the Bible talks about the New Jerusalem. The Jerusalem above is free, and she is our mother ship. And as I'm saying these different things, some people will be, actually, I feel my crown is going a little buzzing with activity right now. Some people that are listening to this are going to be like, could this be true? Like, could I be one of this 144,000? And chances are, if you're watching this right now, you probably are. So, and some people like ask me, like, Chris, I'm afraid I'm an NPC. I'm like, if you're even thinking about it, you're not an NPC. NPCs, they go through their life and they just don't think that way.
Yeah.
Technically, if you're a sleeping player character, like I was asleep, 2/3 of my life, more than 2/3 of my life, I was probably considered an NPC because I accepted this reality, went to work every day, writing software, that type of a thing. So these elite players are here to help awaken, shine their light, because we're going through an awakening process. The next thing that happens after the awakening process is the remembering process. We begin to really remember who we are. And then there's a healing process we have to go through, because when we start to get access to our own Akashic records, and we really begin to understand that we're much more than what we were ever told that we are, there's a healing. And some of us are going through all three of those right now. For a lot of us, it happens like one step at a time, but for everyone, it happens at the right pace. So yeah, so I feel like that number 144,000 is important. And the whole concept is, could there be like a group of people that are bringing this extra light to the planet that are going to help awaken and help bring us into, and we're all doing it together, right? Into the golden age, which is like going to be a renaissance. And I feel like that's coming up soon, where there's going to be, let's say, 1,000 years of tremendous advancements in humanity, for everything from peace to science to people working together in unity, speaking a common language. Wouldn't it be nice if the world spoke a common language and it wasn't based off spell work like the English language is, and we can go get to that level, living in peace with the animals. I believe that people are going to stop like eating animals, and we're going to live in peace, and animals themselves are not going to eat each other. And one of the recent Mandela effects I came across was something called a unicorn birther. A unicorn birther is a woman that when she gives birth, she gets this rush of oxytocin. She dilates to 10 centimeters almost immediately, and the baby comes out and there's no pain. So wouldn't that be wonderful if we lived in a world where, like, when women had to give birth, they didn't have to go through the birth pangs? There's no more slaughterhouses, and we're not eating animals anymore, and we're all living in peace, and there's a renaissance, and we're speaking the same language. It's easy for us to communicate. So all these different things like sound like far out crazy concepts. Like, how could that be? But I believe like all these things are possibly on the horizon, the way I see it. So, in a higher dimensional Earth, why not? Like, do people really think that things are going to be the way they are in a 5D Earth or a higher dimensional Earth? No, they're going to be very different.
Yeah, I actually know two different people who have experienced waking back up onto the ship in their pod and realizing that they weren't here. Like one woman, her name is Sonia, and I talked to her a couple of years ago. How she awoke was one day she went through a great trauma here on Earth, and it was enough to shock her back into her body. And she was almost like this commander of this spaceship. And she had this sort of disconnect. Oh, where are my daughters? Who am I? And she was a man on this ship. And her chair had malfunctioned. And she knew that one of her daughters was in one of the pods, like you could look down and all the pods were there. And her other daughter, though, had been born on Earth and wasn't inhabited by anybody in the pods. And so she said it took her a while, and she reset the chair to go back in to the body here. And she didn't, it malfunctioned, or it didn't do it 100%. And she came back with all of this memory, fully awake, fully open, psychic, able to tap into this and that. And then a second person that I know, that same sort of thing happened. Oh, you say that every time. So it isn't just one life that they're not, the people in the pods are not just here for one life. They may have been in a couple of different lifetimes helping this ascension process along. But yeah, I'm really, I'm of the mindset that if you process all of your fears, your envies, or your judgment, your comparison, and love it and embrace all of your shadow, your energy will increase and the world will begin to reflect that. And that's what helps you go from timeline, as you say, to timeline. Like I would have called it quantum leaping, but essentially you realign with a timeline that's more in keeping with you and what you're sitting in every day. So it's about awareness of how you're really perceiving yourself in your world, that most people are on autopilot. It's like, we are, like you say, that NPC, just, going and drinking or whatever it is. Not that anything is wrong, but we need to stop and ask a question. Is this who I am? And is this what I want? And who could I be?
Yes, exactly. How can I live my best life ever? And part of what you're saying is so right on the mark too, because too many people, they have had bad experiences in the past, or at least they remember that they do, and they have resentment, they have unforgiveness, they have all these things that hold them back. And the way I see it is that those type of things, we have to eliminate that and be able to get to a point of neutrality, because I believe that the matrix lets us advance when we become neutral. And I've heard the people use the word sacred neutral, but when we can exist in neutrality, then all these things can begin to happen for us, where we can get to that level where life becomes the way we want it to be. There's a concept called not just manifestation, but there's a concept called super manifestation. There's a abracadabra, I create as I speak. So literally, could there be a future where we could become super manifestors just by speaking the words? So all kinds of really cool stuff around the horizons.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How I define it is we live in this world of polarity, and how we're going to get out of here is we have to embrace both ends of the spectrum and not be wedded to either end. Either end cannot, in a way, be greater or lesser than another. It's all experience. And that's what we have to look at this as a fantastic experience that has been
Yes.
incredibly hard at times. But ultimately, when we learn to embrace and find peace with all levels of this polarity, that's when we're ready to move out. That's it. And while we're saying that this is better than this, or this is bad and this is good, we are in the polarity of this dream. And it's to move beyond it and to look back and go, wow, what an amazing time we've had here. And it's a tough one to ask of people when they're in difficult situations. But I always say, what can you learn from that situation? That's your high road in that situation.
Yeah. I know a lot of people get disappointed, like, why is there so much evil in the world? Because this is a duality. We're in a duality. We're in good and evil, light and dark. I say puppies and parasites. But basically, we're here to have this experience of both, and it is an experience. And there are realms you can visit that are like heaven realms that are all woo, but
Yeah.
that can get boring after a while. You're in a heaven realm for 1,000 years. You may want to start experience something where you could progress and get to another level. So, yeah, I believe we're having a very specific experience. I also believe that to get into this place, you have to be a champion. You have to be a champion gamer, or else you wouldn't even be allowed in here. And then I go to another level where I believe that the experience that we're having now is literally a tryout for something even bigger. So, yeah, so there's a lot of layers of the way you could look at this reality and what it is. But the bottom line is that where we are now, we're all on a path, and we can't help it because the earth is vibrating. People see the Schumann resonance, they see all the solar flare activity. There's all this like unique cosmic energy that's coming onto the planet. from other stars and so forth, we're vibrating into higher timelines, whether you like it or not. So everyone's kind of going to be dragged along. And for those that don't want to be here, they'll drop their bodies and they'll move on to whatever is appropriate for them. But the planet, the way I see it, is on a one-way course, and it's straight up.
Yeah. And we're closer than we realize, I think.
Yeah.
To that moment.
Yeah.
Korestiko ya takamako bati ke tikataka ama akote dikike ganga tsaka atidikika tsu utibibitika miakaka sekika kaka.
Yes, yeah. Tazio mochidalato aussi, matuyano wale qui siet mesiti passe me en wale was who shinita mona pusieti akwa no aleti shira politikameti anik ashkatikabeti kabu sario polisholo mosholo.
Your language has a French accent at times, and I think some of the English language is somehow from that. Like sometimes I sound like Chinese or Japanese when I say mine. So I think it was here originally, and that whole separation and how we got sort of stuck in a way, that was the separation of the language and into the spell casting that you talk about.
Yeah, so because a lot of people, like you said, that when they hear me speak, they're like, oh, it sounds French. A lot of people say it sounds Hebrew and it sounds French. Someone once told me like they could pick out Cherokee Indian words out of it as well. But yeah, I believe there was an original language. And Hebrew is interesting too, because it's probably one of the closest ones to the original. But French is interesting because for a long time, people don't realize it, but even in Russia, they spoke French, and it was the people that were in royalty, so to speak. Like they didn't speak the common Russian language; they all spoke French. So there definitely are aspects in the French language, the Hebrew language, and others, as well as all the languages, like the whole concept of the Tower of Babel, how like God confused all the languages, and they all took their own little parts of it. So yes, and it's cool when people can actually hear that and pick out like the intonations of the different words.
Yeah. So any last words, Chris? Would you like to bring, if you are open to this, a light language activation for people to help them remember who they are?
Yeah, I could definitely do that, and I'm sure you'll participate with that too. And so before we continue, if anyone does not want to remember, they might want to stop the recording now. And the remembering could be in dreams. You might have like a really interesting dream that could give you a remembering. You could also have a specific vision. You could all of a sudden be guided to watch some movie or something that will trigger something in you to be like, could I have lived during that time period, or blah, blah, blah. So people should keep on the lookout for any kind of synchronicities that could help them remember. And some memories will be good and some memories won't be, but you'll be presented with the remembering of what's appropriate for you at this time. And yeah, the whole concept of the great remembering, let's bring it on, because when I talk to people, they always tell me they want to remember who they are. Everyone does, right? So yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'll start off. And as I'm speaking, so people know that I'll be talking to your higher self or your divine self, your dreaming self in the pod, so to speak, and letting them, giving them the codes as to who I am, and, authorization codes, so to speak, because on another level, it kind of gets technical, and just to make sure that everything is genuine. And again, for the dreaming part of you to release the information that's most appropriate for you. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Siasia mukiant piasia quesian cali shoko. Damia tuasia tuanoa tuya tusiako matua taku isusu. Shaku yon pasianomi konuba. Misha tuayalo pusiatua shachia quaya. Molo pusiane bayota. Pariansianimia tua chio. Mulia pusia sayatu sayosho. Maltuya shalia. Moriotionia Pashala Pushianitia si Sholomuyana Metuana Qualabitiano Shi Dariantomia Kudunia Dua Tua Shakwa La Pasi Pala Moa Wala Busiana Wa Miesho Lebesio Ma Kole Besianeta Saka La Gushi Mulo Malamutidi Salatatawa Shukuya Mo Masa Bisho Pala Pasosia Paliosio Leometiatuatuai, Sayasiano Bayonepe, Sayosio Poesi, Salo Poesia, Ulama, Paliotuano, Siacole Bisnicialo Cuncia, Paliotuban, Jeromosia, Posianatuia, Tushaledi.
Okay, I will bring through some. And Shunya Kopokatotika. Setika bambo takarite, sakatati te kanya sakabatia. Sino kokobati, sikakatariat sekabinde, sukotatiat sukoye shanyat sakike. Anyati, ayeku, isenoyamu, areti, ayinu, iseyanuyamu. Ijindaya shesasa, sukaba eti zakatarianana kike, areti jenzo ye takrianana kike, hambareti jkanaria trikike zochania kamatiatsa, sekuka, 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 umbriat sukoriat kanyet sakariatsa, hangitse duchana kamaya, handia sakabariat shekonia kike, Sikanye kuka, Sakaria sesusa, Hareti shenzea kuka, Eshu shene sasa.
As you're talking too, like getting all these frequencies in my ear. So yeah, I think we did more than remembering. There could be some DNA stuff, activations going on.
Yeah.
Maybe some crystalline stuff going on. So
absolutely.
we'll see.
I think how I always say is that your higher self knows what to do with the frequencies and the codes. And it's like, I suppose, a download. And there are many levels to the light language. And some people will just take one level, other people will take another level, and some people will absorb the whole lot. And it will unpack slowly over the next, days and weeks. So if anybody would love to leave a comment and say what they felt and what they experienced, and come back and leave a comment as things unfold. So thank you, Chris. Where can people find you? What's the best place to find you?
You can find me pretty much two places right now. One is on YouTube on a channel called Quantum Businessman, and the other one is on my website, quantumbusinessman.com. So pretty easy to find.
Yeah, I highly recommend anybody who wants to expand their mind, expand their concept of this reality, to go and check out that YouTube channel. I actually sometimes post them in my community channel, a link to them, just to go have a mind sort of, wow.
Yeah, thank you.
So Chris, just been so phenomenal. I've enjoyed myself thoroughly, and the energies, our higher selves, trading, connecting. I thank your higher self, and I thank you for participating today with me.
You're welcome. And for the audience that watches us too, like your higher selves are trading with us as well. There's a lot of trading going on and blueprints being passed back and forth. So it's all good.
It's all good.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you again soon.